with the key at any time you carry these passes, otherwise you'll have problems getting back in again.
This is your luggage here, is it? Did you pack this luggage yourself? And have you left it unattended at any time?
That's right.
Big smile. Just on the line. Nice and close together. That's it. Big smile for me. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi everybody, welcome aboard.
Thank
What
you.
is your cabin number? 3103. If you'd like to go through to the stairs there, go down one floor. Hi everyone, welcome aboard.
Greetings and thanks.
Hi girls, do you know where to find your cabin? Hi everybody. Hello, welcome. I'm the social director of the QE2, and as such my job is looking after many of the VIPs that come on board. Spend a lot of time with the actual passengers on board. I call bingo and I do the horse racing. Hey, how you doing? Welcome home. Gee, how long since you've been on board? I don't ever have to smile. I just enjoy my job. I love the people, and the difficult ones are just as much fun to work with as the happy ones. And I never smile if I don't want to. I like the job so much that I smile all the time.
Would it be possible for the relevant officer to tell me who was dealing with life raft this time? Is it Kelvin Hughes or aim safety, please? Over. Aim safety. Good night. Still working cargo here.
Forward. Clearing cows with 35 on board.
Right, get to VTS, thank you. We have the Penalda outbound that's coming round Calshot. primary function on here is a watch-keeping officer. I'm responsible for the safe navigation of the ship for 8 hours a day. The captain is in command, but when he's not on the bridge, the officer of the watch is in charge of the ship. We have 126 officers on the ship. We have in total 1,022 crew. So 900 crew members are being managed by 126 officers.
Southampton pilot, Carter. Southampton pilot, Carter.
Starboard 20. Starboard 20.
Okay, we're back to 72 now. You keep your horse back over.
My prime concern is to get all the passengers and crew safely on a voyage and also keep the ship safe.
On stage, Master of QE2, Captain Ron Warwick.
It's my pleasure and privilege to welcome you on board for this transatlantic voyage.
Sometimes that does conflict with the social side. During these crossings we've had a lot of fog. That's potentially a danger, so I would never leave the bridge while there's fog. And accordingly, any social events that are already pre-planned will have to continue without my presence.
Do to make your stay more enjoyable, please don't hesitate to get in touch.
Miles away. Now you see the reason why I'm drifting miles away. Just imagine a great big world waiting for us to discover it.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing today? That's the idea. Hello there. We have 9 children in the family, and It was a very poor existence. I can't even remember if I had shoes before I was about 10 years old.
You should now be at your emergency muster station. This is where you would come.
So we had rather a very poor start. At the age of 14, I left school and started to work. And then at the age of 26, both my mum and dad died. And the 3 youngest children in the family had nobody to look after them. I took on the responsibility of being their mother and father. From there, I just concentrated on my dancing full time. I was the Australian dance champion in 1981. I enjoyed the dancing right through until I was 37, but it was time to get my financial life into order. In fact, I have 8 homes now and things are looking rather good for my future.
Inside of the life jacket we have a whistle for attracting attention, and the whistle will be blown just to attract attention of any passers-by.
I don't envy wealthy people who have been wealthy from all of their life, and I feel that rather the opposite. I feel that I'm the lucky one because I have earned everything that I have, and now that I have a little bit more, I really do appreciate it. I don't believe in luck. I believe that you certainly do make your own luck, and I think you can take your own destiny in hand and you can be whatever you want to be.
I like to work in the ship, but sometimes, you know, we have a feeling like you miss something you do in the Philippines. You miss your family, miss your friends, something like that. But that is normally happen to everybody. We are some people, mostly English and British, they don't like to be as in a group, a Filipino as in a group. But when it comes to work, we are working together. Sometimes that they go ashore and you leave it there in the ship. You have no feelings to, let us say, come on, join us. No, you don't like that.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Pay attention, follow up on the menu here. Sliced turkey breast with walnut salad, baby shrimp salad with grapefruit.
Passenger numbers, Jamie, any ideas? Yes, Tom, we're looking at about a passenger figure of about 1250. Right. We're still updating our computer at this point in time. Okay.
I don't think I'd want to fly even if I could go on a ship like this. I mean, this is so much fun.
If you can afford the luxury of time, certainly this is the loveliest way to travel. When we first began to travel, it was very structured. It was very carefully kept to each class was in a certain area of this ship. Now you no longer have that. You have no sense of any pressure. And you're getting all of that wonderful sea breeze. You took 10 days to get across the Atlantic, and you just had absolute peace. There wasn't any sense of hurry.
Because look, they're practically standing still. In 1937, there were so many ships crossing the ocean. Even on the ship, there were so few people on the ship because there's so many ships going back and forth. I mean, we had a table for two, and you couldn't have possibly talked to anybody next to you unless you shouted at the top of your lungs, and they'd wonder what you're shouting about. What would you say, Ellen?
After 55 years. Golly day.
The other difference in the old days, there was no entertainment provided for you. You had to amuse yourselves. They had a ping pong table on the deck that we played ping pong. You walked, you read, you did things yourselves rather than having entertainment provided for you.
And also the valet service you got in your stateroom, they would draw the bath for you and make sure the temperature is right. Now you have to draw your own bath, and when you get rusty water sometimes, you lose your temper. But other than that, what would you say?
I think you summed it up nicely.
It's really putting me to sleep. Is it putting you to sleep?
It is. I think I'll take a little nap.
Well, it doesn't cost anything. It's free.
We went to a birthday party together, and
No, not together, because you were engaged to be married to somebody else.
I wasn't going to tell that. Apparently something happened, and 3 months later we were engaged. So that's really quite a record, isn't it?
Especially when she was engaged to somebody else, and I was told it was absolutely hopeless to ever try to get a date with her. Fortunately, the biggest thing that ever happened in my life was when she went out with me, and I told her the first night, you know something, someday you're going to marry me. Of course, she thought I was off my rocker, but at least we were married in 3 months, so... My father heard we were getting married, and of course he was delighted with my wife just as much as I was. And he said, do you think your wife would like a trip to Europe?
It's really
Well, then you take on.
Well, I agreed immediately. I thought it would be a lovely experience.
Did you see something?
No.
Just imagination, I guess.
And you know, we were so young and so innocent. We didn't realize that what we had was an absolutely wonderful thing. We were just living in the lap of luxury. We had a marvelous time, but we didn't realize at that time how wonderful it was.
See, we're able to walk wherever we want. I mean, we have pretty much full access to the ship. So what's harder is 90% of the crew members aren't. The public's nice. I mean, they're very complimentary to the shows. I mean, they love the shows. They come on here and they don't expect to see what they're doing. And so a lot of the shows they really enjoy. And to us, to them, we're like stars. So that most time they just talk to us and say hi.
We basically get inflated egos the whole time.
Yeah.
I think one thing that is weird, though, is that you don't get any privacy.
Yeah.
Because you can't get away from your audience. Like, living with your audience is a very strange thing.
the responsibility of being in command or being in control of the most famous liner left in the world. We're keeping a lookout for other ships, icebergs. There's many things to look for. Sea life, fishing boats, other ships, etc. So it's definitely not boring or lonely, if you like. But, it's a very important job. We're the only pair of eyes looking out of the window ahead of the ship now. And there's somebody here 24 hours a day. So we don't rely on electronic navigation equipment all the time. It's still the old method of looking and watching and listening and everything. The passengers listen to announcements from the bridge every day, and we like to put a bit of variety into them. I used to give weather forecasts to the passengers in the morning. I used to do the morning navigator's talk on the speaker system. And if it was going to be a wet day, rainy day, I would tell passengers that we do not expect any rain between the showers. So I used to get a few phone calls after that. What do you mean? What do you mean? There has always been in the British Merchant Navy a friendly rivalry between deck officers and engineers. And many years ago, the chief engineer would draw an imaginary line on the deck and say, "You are my engineers. Over there are the deck officers. You will never mix with them." The only engineer and officer that was speaking with the captain and the chief engineer. They had a business agreement, and they called this situation oil and water. And oil and water never mixes. Now, in this day and age, it's impossible to run a ship with that setup. Engineers and deck officers, their areas of responsibility intermingle all the time.
Things were coming up which he wanted to skirt, and he was getting old, and he got a little bit of money suddenly. So I thought, let's go and spend it and see our youngest son. And that's why we're...
I was one of these kids that didn't really know what I wanted to do. My father, he used to go away for months on end, so I never really saw a lot of him as a youngster. But then when I was around about 12 and 13, my dad started asking me what I wanted to do. And I used to come up with the odd ideas that kids usually do, like being a train driver or something like that. And then in the end I ran out of ideas, and I said, well, I'll go to sea. And he just said, well, it's not a bad life, and it started from there. I don't regard it as the last transatlantic liner. I think it probably will be the last one, but I like to be optimistic and think that there will always be a ship on the transatlantic liner. I've always had an affinity for the Queen Elizabeth II. When it was being built 25 years ago, I remember seeing it and thinking that it would be a really nice ship to be in command of. My father was here in the very early stages as well. He's sailing across as a holiday with my mother, and he's going to visit my brother who lives in the USA. I asked him to come along here with me because it was very special for us, because he sailed with the ship when it first came out, when it was first launched. He was the first captain of the QE2. And now, 20 years later, he comes aboard again with me, his son, as the master. So it's a very, very special for him and for myself, of course. He was very, very close to the ship when it was being built, and it's always been my favourite ship. And I feel very, very proud to have him here on board with me. I wouldn't say it's a difficult job, but it's a job that has many hidden requirements, because there's no one to lean on. You have to make all the decisions yourself, and when the time comes to make a decision and all your senior staff are looking at you, waiting for you to make an announcement of what you're going to do, then it becomes quite lonely.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the theatre. Our guest is a Nigerian writer who's resident in London, England. He's published 5 books, including 2 volumes of stories. He won England's most prestigious literary award, the Booker Prize, in 1991. Please welcome Ben Ockery.
I'm sort of pleased that one is doing this event today rather than yesterday. Because yesterday was very rocky, and so was I. I was born in the middle of Nigeria in a place called Minna, 1959. I was brought to England at the age of 2, went back to Nigeria on the eve of the Civil War, came back to England to study literature and to write, which I've been doing ever since. I don't believe in raising artists or writers to the level of priests or sages or anything like that. Artists are only as wise and as good as the effect that their works have on people. And so one is struck by the humility of the figure of William Shakespeare. We don't know anything about him, but his influence and his power has been greater than the power of empires. It's the work that is valuable. The person comes and goes. Every piece of work is dead. To human beings, unlock their own imagination and their own internal response and imbue these things with life. I mean, sculptors don't make the wind change direction, and words on a page most certainly don't leap out and become Don Quixote. If I was going to tell someone about this boat, I would tell them there's nothing greater than the humility of water. And yet, it is more awesome than the power and the rage of water. It is the great bearer in terms of the early myths of the journeys of heroes from this plane of consciousness to other planes of consciousness.
The question is, do we allow for being an hour late? The ship is really run like a small business. In fact, we even have on board what we call a business group, and that consists of me as the head of the group, and then the staff captain who's in charge of all the operational side, the hotel manager that looks after the hotel and catering side, and then the chief engineer who looks after all the engineering and services side.
1, 2. Under she goes. 1, 2. Her back step. 1, 2. Now she turns. Down. 1, 2. Her back step. 1, 2. Her back step. 1, 2. Her back step. 1, 2. Up she goes.
I was happy before I came here, but because my wife asked for divorce, I wanted to go away, I wanted to disappear. And I've been here nearly 5 years in October. It's a Portuguese dream, you know. We always go away from home with two things in mind, is to own something, to build a house, and to own a business. That is, probably I have to stay here another 2 or 3 years to achieve that. It's a wonderful feeling when a guest comes here and say, hello, Henry, oh, nice to see you again. I'm very pleased to see you. And I repeated the same words, I'm very pleased to see you too, madam. And it's wonderful to have you again on the ship. You become attached to people, you know.
I come down and give them a hand by tomorrow, right? And,
I just came on board to stay with my husband. He's controlling all the prices and food and beverage that coming and going.
Being in a restaurant, we have to be able to smile and to make sure the guest looks at you and they know you're happy, even being unhappy. You have to make sure all the time you are happy.
He is very positive man, and he's very fair to his staffs, and he's funny.
We use only the fillet of the salmon, that's the center. So we use this part and this part. This is going to be the top wing, and this is going to be the bottom wing.
I like to come with him. I think it's 3 months a year the family can go with that crew member or officer, I don't know.
We put about 6 pieces of them, which weighs about 90 grams. And then once that's finished, we arrange them as it is, and then we put some cream over it. As we put some cream over it, and to bring that color contrast out, a little bit, a touch of caviar. That's what you do. This is during the world cruise. This particular lady, she's very funny because she complains about everything. Until to a stage that she cannot complain anymore. She starts picking on the forks, the tablecloth, the napkins, the glasses. One particular night, she ordered this trout. So we make her the trout, cook it a la minute for her, and everything nicely presented. So she just tastes a little bit of the trout, and she starts complaining. That she says that the fish is tasting fishy. I do not know why, and I do not like it, so take it back.
That company I was working with chartered QE2 in Japan for 3 months, 3 years ago. And I was in that project to have a wedding party on board QE2 when I met my husband.
Now, if a passenger were to come and tell you that, what are you going to do? You can say, the fish is too fishy, I don't know what to eat. Those are the things that we get.
Can't really compare the travelling because this takes 5 days to do it, so it's an experience in itself. You get to where you want to go, but also you do this. You experience all this. If you go on a plane, you just get from A to B. You don't count the hours that you travel as any experience. It's just like, well, for someone like Simon, it's just traumatic. Just being up in a big metal bird and sweating.
The group we've got on board at the moment is called The Cure, and my job is to spend time with them. They're very different to the other passengers because they're a lot younger, and they only wear black clothes, and they live only in the night time and sleep in the daytime. I think that a lot of the passengers that see them on board get rather confused that these sort of people would want to travel on a ship as classy as the QE2 is.
Flying's ridiculous, really. It's like being stuck up so high. It sort of makes you not relaxed. And it's just a more sedate way of travelling, so being on a boat. I mean, you can't, if you want some fresh air, so you can't walk out on the wing on a plane.
Room service, can I help you?
This is Mrs. Watson speaking. Would you come and pick up my dress to go to the laundry?
Yes, I will collect your address, Mrs. Watson.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. I'm working every day. In the morning I start at 7:30 and I have a room service, first breakfast or tea orders. I'm starting working QE2 because in QE2 is good money and I can't go back in Yugoslavia where I'm born because there's still war down, and I can't work in England because Yugoslav people usually can't work in England. My round have 14 cabins, and I'm making these cabins. I have work on afternoon with the same room service, and in the evening I start at 7 o'clock and I have make cabins again for evening. I'm dreaming. Last night and the day before night and today afternoon. I dream all times my town, how I'm walking. I've been in my house, and after that I'm going in old town, and after that in one place up where is the fighting now.
All this stuff along the alleyway here. We're in Southampton in 2 days' time. I want it all.
The major part of my job on the ship is, of course, to keep the propellers turning, to keep the ship running as efficiently and as safely as I'm able to do. I would say a lot of our passengers have absolutely no concept whatsoever about what makes this ship tick. A lot of people come here with this misconception that they're actually joining a hotel. Well, the QE2 is not a hotel and never will be a hotel. For example, QE2 can do a top speed of 32.5 knots. Okay, there's not many hotels that can do that. Some people come on here and say, there's a bit of a vibration. What's gone wrong? You know, I mean, the amount of horsepower and energy required to push a vessel along at that sort of speed is quite incredible. There's 96 megawatts of installed power on QE2 to push her along at that speed. And a certain amount of vibration and movement will occur, as indeed when we're in a seaway. If there's a heavy swell running, even though we are fully stabilized, the ship will move. It has to move. The first time I ever went on a ship was when I was 5 years old, and that was a long sea voyage across the Atlantic Ocean to Central America with my mother and father. And that was on a cargo passenger ship, and that experience at a very young age, I think, put the sea into my veins.
I'm a great believer in predestination. If you were to stay at home in order to survive your life, you would never do anything.
The exercises we did this morning was to strengthen the muscles in shoulders, arms, wrists, legs and feet. And it's easier in the water on yourself because water is buoyant, whereas it's harder on land.
If you are supposed to leave this life in a certain year, you will depart this life in a certain year. The actual happening to yourself, whether it's flying or sailing in a ship, is pretty remote. When I was 6 years of age, I had polio, and the part of me that was paralyzed were my vocal cords. It's a very unusual thing to not be able to speak and not to be able to make any noise at all. So with great joy, when the paralysis left my vocal cords, I could probably tell you I've never stopped speaking, singing, and poetry.
I'd like to sing for you a song by Robert Burns, called the Yow's Tay the Nows.
When we're alone, when we're on the bridge, then we can be a little bit more informal. The captain will call us by our Christian names. We, of course, will call him captain or sir. And you must always have that level of respect for the man who's in command. There's nobody above him. He's on his own. The buck stops there. It's a very lonely position.
It must be like a lot of professions where you have an image of a person or a position, but until you're actually in it, you never really know what it's like. When the time comes that you actually take over the reins and become a captain, then the reality of the situation becomes apparent.
Queen Elizabeth 2, QE2, this is Whiskey Oscar Mike 1209. What is your position tonight, sir? Come back.
Whiskey Oscar Mike, this is Queen Elizabeth 2. We are 44 degrees north, 41 degrees west.
44 north, 41 west. I copy loud and clear, loud and clear. How do you copy me, over?
Pilot boat New York, Queen Elizabeth 2, channel 16, steering.
Hi, this is Ambrose Pilots, back to the Queen Elizabeth 2, channel 087.
08.
Roger that, sir. Thanks very much for the call. Pilot on your arrival.
Yeah, understood. We'll slot it behind the tanker and the container ship. You'll be seeing that dredger within the next few minutes on the port side. Just watch for it, please.
Okay.
Four cables, Roger.
Visibility is not good, sir. Maybe at 0 right now.
Maritime from the QE2.
Queen Elizabeth 2, this driver Roger. You have the Maryland off the Buttermilk 1 boys going to be bound for the North River, followed by the Tuscarora off the 28 boys going to be bound for the North River.
Thanks, Trevor. Yeah, I just cleared the Brooklyn Bridge. How do you got Tampa standing by?
Yes, go. Starboard side boy, Roger.
Stop port.
Stop port.